Story 1. I have been married to the love of my life for over 3 decades, but I will always regret that when I was young and didn't know how, I couldn't love my first wife in a way that made her feel truly valued and cherished. She deserved better. Story 2. I put in my headphones during the 2-hour train ride with my aunt from Montreal. We had just spent the weekend celebrating her bachelorette party and I was burned out, but I knew she would have loved to talk. She died a week later and never had her wedding. She was like a second mother to me. Story 3. If you have a realistic interest or goal that you keep putting off out of laziness or because you say you will get to it eventually, you will regret it. Simple things like wanting to get certified in self-contained underwater breathing apparatus, learn an instrument, get reasonably fit, learn a language, and so on typically require 20 to 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or a weekend a couple of times each year. That is a doable commitment for most people, but they push it off for various, usually poor reasons. If you have an interest, commit to it. Force yourself to do it for 3 months no matter what. After 3 months you may not enjoy it, but at least you will know. If you do enjoy it, you will have started the habit. I am guilty of this myself. I have wanted to learn guitar since I was a teenager. I started once and gave up after a few days because my fingers hurt and a video game I enjoy was released. I am about to turn 40 and I am now committed to actually learning. I am practicing 15 to 20 minutes each day, and I have formal lessons scheduled for next year. You may end up not liking something, but it can lead you elsewhere. I wanted to be certified in self-contained underwater breathing apparatus and finally did it 10 years ago. Turned out to be only okay for me. There is a lot of gear, it is heavy and cumbersome, and I did not enjoy it as much as I thought I would. But that journey led me to freediving and spearfishing, which I enjoy immensely. I do not think I would have considered freediving if I had not tried self-contained underwater breathing apparatus first. If it is reasonable, then just do it. Story 4. Being afraid to take risks and worrying about what others think of me. Story 5. I threw away all my audio recordings from childhood. I had a tape recorder when I was 12 and made about 10 tapes of my jokes and whatever I was thinking. I am 31 now, and I would like to listen to them again to remember who I was. Story 6. I did not get my college degree right out of high school. I messed around, took 30 years to graduate, and I will pay for it by working until I die. Story 7. I did not get help for my mental health soon enough and did not realize how bad it had become. I do not know if I will recover from this burnout. Story 8. I have too many to list, so I pretend there are none. That way my heart will stop breaking. Story 9. I allowed toxic people to dictate who I was and what I did. Living your life your way is so freeing. Story 10. I did not trust my own instincts and let my midwife and my husband convince me. I was just tired when I repeatedly told them I thought something was wrong while in labor at home the day before my son's stillbirth. Story 11. I kept losing my contact lenses. They were pretty expensive, so I thought it would be easier to keep track of them if I superglued them to my eyes. Seemed like a good idea, but to make a long story short, do not. Story 12. My mum had a heart attack. She was on blood thinners from the first hospital and could not have surgery right away. She had to wait. Meanwhile, she sat up in bed, joked around, and did not seem that ill. But she was, because when they tried weaning her off the cocktail of intravenous medications and drips, she would deteriorate. She patted the bed and said, "Come sit with me." I was very uncomfortable and declined. I was incredibly worried about snagging or kinking the intravenous line. She said she understood and that it was okay. She passed away 3 days later from complications during surgery. I keep replaying that over and over in my head, wishing I had been less of a coward and that I had given her a last snuggle. Crushes me. Story 13. Choosing the field I was in and never getting out. Graphic design and advertising. Story 14. How I hurt people and myself with my drinking. I am several years sober now, but it still haunts me. Story 15. Franca asked me if I needed a lift, emphatically and practically begging me to get in the car with her. I was such an idiot. She was a very nice person and extremely attractive. Story 16. I do not keep up with therapy regularly. I have suffered from severe depression since I was 12. I am 23 now. Although I have been to therapy multiple times, I always stop showing up at some point because I get stuck in a hole and cannot get out of bed for anything other than work, and even then I am just physically present. I know it would be for the better, but I cannot fight my apathy once a bad phase hits. I cannot go into inpatient therapy because I am broke, in debt, and forced to work. I simply cannot take a break unless I am willing to lose the roof over my head and give up both of my cats to a foster home. At the rate things are going, I will probably keep functioning for my cats, and once they die, it will be time for me to leave as well. Story 17. I did not learn financial literacy or develop good savings habits in my teen years and 20s. Looking back, I should have been able to save a down payment, buy a home and a car, and be better set up in my 30s. Instead, I was irresponsible and did not think about the future at all. Now I have better habits, but it is nearly impossible to afford a home where I live on what should be a reasonable salary. Story 18. Not breaking up with my ex-husband while we were dating, even though the red flags were obvious. Story 19. I love my kids, but if I could go back in time, I would not have gotten married or moved away from my family. You can't miss what you don't have. Story 20. I was a senior in high school and got mad at my mom for leaving the light on at 5 a.m. while she was getting ready for open heart surgery. Instead of wishing her well, I complained and begrudgingly gave her a hug goodbye. She died from unexpected complications during that surgery. I wish I could have shown her more love in what would be my final moment with her. Story 21. I snapped at my father years ago and said some hurtful things. It was the first time I had ever seen him cry. I apologized that same day and we had a meaningful conversation, but I wish I had not lost my temper. I cannot take back what I said, and although we are on good terms now, I still think about it sometimes when we see each other. Story 22. Leaving a man who loved me unconditionally, a man who is everything a woman dreams of but few experience in a lifetime, is my deepest regret. I will always regret that I could not stay with him or love him. I owe him an eternal debt I could never repay. Story 23. I regret not accepting the offer from a wealthy elderly woman in the local bonsai club to send me to Japan to study with a bonsai nursery owner she knew, at her expense. She wanted me to learn to care for her extensive collection of trees. I was 18 and thought I knew better. It would have been an incredible experience and I still think about it. 20 years later, I am still into the hobby, but only minimally. Story 24. If I could go back in time, I wish I had never met my husband. Story 25. I probably let the one get away because I was an alcoholic. I still am. That never changes, but I have been sober for over 2 years now, 816 days to be precise. Story 26. I married her because I did not want to be alone anymore. Not because I was in love with her. That was a train wreck. Story 27. I regret not trying on my mom's wedding dress when I was engaged. She had saved it for years in case I would. I was too embarrassed because I thought it would be 1 or 2 sizes too small, and I did not want to look foolish in it. She passed away 6 years ago, but now that I have children I realize I should have just tried it on so she could have seen what her daughter looked like in her old dress. I saved both dresses, so if any of her grandchildren want to wear one they will have that opportunity. Story 28. Not speaking up for myself or avoiding conflict. Letting people walk all over me or completely misunderstand me when I could have defended myself. Story 29. I was a narcissistic piece of shit for too long. I lost the love of my life. Story 30. I am reflecting on unrealized opportunities. As I go forward, I realize how much I have missed in the past. Story 31. The one that made me eventually create the subreddit regret joining and immigrate to Canada years later. Story 32. Do not get tinnitus. We have been 10 years away from a cure for over 30 years. Story 33. Regrets. Not traveling sooner, not completing my degree, not marrying the person I was meant to be with, not having a baby, and not topping up my superannuation. Story 34. Wasting time with the wrong people instead of spending that time with family. Story 35. Having a manic or psychotic episode and hurting others emotionally and physically. Story 36. I changed my major 4 times. I graduated during the pandemic and everything that followed. I wasted years of my life in limbo. Story 37. Spending thousands of bitcoins on RuneScape gold when I was a kid instead of keeping them. Story 38. Being born, or if not that, falling in love again and again. Story 39. I regret that I did not visit my aunt when she was dying of a brain tumor. She had explicitly asked me not to go because she was exhausted from having had so many visitors already. Her son, my cousin, did not tell me she had fallen and was nearing the end for a couple of days. Eventually he told me, and I was planning to drive down a 4-hour drive. Just as I was leaving that morning, he called to say she had passed away. I was too upset to drive. She was more of a mother to me than my biological mother. Rest in peace, Virginia. Story 40. I badmouthed an ex-friend on Twitter when I was young and petty. I deleted it soon after, but I know it was hurtful, wrong, and something I never want to do again. Story 41. I feel like a loser. I have no wife, no friends, and no family. I have a dead-end job with no chance of promotion. I do not own property or stocks because I do not have money. I regret being born, I guess. I am really sorry you are feeling this way. Are you thinking about harming yourself or ending your life right now? If you are, please contact emergency services immediately. If you are in the United States, call or text 988 for the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you are elsewhere, contact local emergency services or crisis line in your area. You do not have to go through this alone. Would you like to talk about what is making you feel this way? Story 42. I forgive each of you. Now you must forgive yourselves. Story 43. I never asked out the girl who lived next door to me when I was in middle school. Story 44. I cared about what other people thought when I was younger. Story 45. I regret ever losing her. When I first met her, she became my best friend instantly. We would talk for hours each day, were constantly on the phone, and genuinely supported each other. That summer felt peaceful. Then, in December, I started having rough patches in my life and became mean to her until she left. Right after she left, I became very depressed and found a friend who reminded me of her. That is where most of the problems began. She decided to try one more time and soon realized I had replaced her. But she stayed. I was playing both sides until one day I finally could not take it and asked her out. She said yes, but I had not ended things with the other girl. For the first 2 months of our relationship, she was still there, and I cheated. After 2 months, I ended that other relationship, but I never told my girlfriend because I was too cowardly. I was afraid of losing my best friend and the woman I loved because we were falling deeply in love. We went on many trips and had an amazing relationship until one trip. She stayed at my house, and while I was at work, she found the old messages that proved I had cheated. So she broke up with me. The following weeks were rocky. She tried her hardest, but the anger and resentment toward me kept growing, and the insults became worse. It is my fault. I let lust control me instead of love. By the time I matured enough to see that she was what I really wanted, it was too late. We stopped talking recently. I lost my best friend and the woman I loved so much. It taught me a lesson, but I will never forget her smile and laugh. I just wish I could go back and never have met the other girl, or at least have cut her off. Now all I can do is look at old photos and remember what I lost. Story 46. Bending over backward for approval and love from a parent who was incapable of giving them. Story 47. I confessed to my crush. She had been a good friend in middle school, and I had not planned to tell her because I was afraid of the fallout. Another friend found out and pressured me until I decided, screw it. May as well. Can't be that bad, right? It was. The confession drastically changed our friendship. She had never been into me, and I knew that. It took almost 3 years for us to become friends again. We are on good terms now, but something changed after that confession, and I do not think it was for the better. Story 48. To be honest, nothing. There are things I wish I had not done in the past that changed my life in a huge way, but I also would not have been able to be there for the people who needed someone. Even if it was just talking to a random person, it can be a huge help, and that means a lot to me. My biggest example is when I was homeless. An older gentleman gave my friend and me a room for a couple of days. I stayed up later than my friend and talked with him about all kinds of things. Eventually, the conversation turned to sexuality, and I found out he was gay and had been for most of his life. His family turned their backs on him in the 1960s because of it. I told him I was not, because he had that look of wanting someone to sleep next to him, but that there is nothing wrong with being gay. We talked for hours, and afterward he thanked me for just listening and being kind. If I had not been homeless because of being stupid, I would not have been able to talk to one of the nicest people I have ever met and inadvertently help him. Story 49. I picked up cigarettes as an adult even though I had known they were disgusting throughout my childhood. Even when I tried to kick the habit, I knew from the first cigarette that it was a foolish thing to do. I will always regret it. Story 50. I gave my time and energy to people in the past who literally deserved nothing. Story 51. I believed my dad when he called me useless. Only now, 5 decades later, do I know that he was wrong. Story 52. I wasted money on webcam sites. It was an addiction that cost me $20,000. Story 53. I regret not getting my college degree sooner. I am definitely better off mentally now than I was 10 years ago and am able to complete a degree program. Story 54. I wish I had gone to medical school. I wish I had not let someone tell me in my formative years that I was too stupid and never could. I became a lawyer, but I still grieve because I wish I were a doctor. Story 55. I did not help my sister. She needed help. I would have taken that burden and made time somehow. She passed away from an overdose. Story 56. Crying and wasting tears on people who did not deserve them. Story 57. I did not have sex the first time it was available to me. I chickened out even though I wanted to. Story 58. I am ruining my body, wasting money, and not learning any useful skills. Story 59. Once in school, I made fun of a short girl and she burst into tears in a full classroom. Still haunts me. I feel it was the one purely evil thing I have done, meant only to cause hurt. I do not know where she is now, so I cannot apologize, but I hope she is happy and has forgotten the incident. Story 60. I am 54 years old. My biggest regret is something I did in 7th grade. I was a loner without many friends, the result of moving around a lot. I had been at the new school for a few weeks. One day a girl gave me a folded note with my name on it. I watched her leave and go to her friend, who smiled and turned away. I recognized her. She was in several of my classes. The loner in me interpreted the smile as a laugh. I assumed the note was mocking me and threw it in the trash can next to me. Only when I left that school a month later did I learn the girl liked me and the note told me so. I often wonder what would have happened if I had read it. Would I have grown into a more confident person? We will never know. I wish I had met my wife sooner, but we were both in the right place at the right time for each other, so I do not count that as a regret. Story 61. I did not go to the prom with the guy who asked me. If I had said yes, we would have been there, and he would not have been where he was when people started shooting. He got caught in the crossfire. He is not dead, but he was hit in the head and will need special care for the rest of his life. Story 62. I wasted my inheritance on fake people when I was 18. I never had any friends and was bullied from 1st grade through high school. When I got the money, all the popular people wanted to hang out with me, including girls. The worst trap is being popular if you have never experienced it. I am still friendless, though. Story 63. I feel I have a few. It's all my own fault. There is no one else to blame. 1. Putting work before my health. My job has low pay anyway. I've been here 16 years, and I'm always the one who stays late or covers when anyone else calls off. I have suffered from migraines since I was a teenager, and I'm only now getting treatment. I have things I need to address that I will struggle with because I'm still putting work first. It's not the love of my job. It's that everyone else calls off and we are constantly short-staffed. 2. Not taking more opportunities to explore. My husband and I are dual income, no kids. We are not the social media version of dual income, no kids people who travel the world and buy expensive things. We live paycheck to paycheck but still try to find adventure, and sometimes we do. I often say no, though, because I have a fear of spending money. I buy groceries and make sure my husband has good clothes and shoes, but if it comes to me, I feel guilty about my Kindle Unlimited payment. I wish I would have said yes to more of those adventures. 3. Guilt for not being at home more. I do not mean that I am physically away or out all night. I mean mentally. When I am home, my brain is everywhere else. Still worried about work, my in-laws, my parents, my sister, and her boyfriend. I feel like I'm not taking those moments in the memories that one day I will longingly reach for. I tried a stupid thing where, when I parked my car at home, I mentally pictured myself putting every worry or issue in the trunk and locking it before I walked in the door. It never really works. I still overthink and am not present in the moments at home. Well, now that I'm feeling depressed, time to clock back into work. Story 64. If I stay in my hometown for my whole life and never move to another state. Story 65. Giving people more worth than they deserve, thinking highly of them, and trusting them for no solid reason other than believing they love me. They do not. Trusting mom. Story 66. That one time an older goth woman invited me to watch movies overnight, and I actually did. Story 67. Pushing away anyone who shared trauma responses from the same childhood abuse I experienced, dehumanizing them into haunting mirrors, rather than seeing them as potentially intense, empathic connections. Story 68. I'm really sorry you're feeling this way. Are you thinking about harming yourself right now? If you are in immediate danger, please call emergency services, 911 in the US, or your local emergency number. You can also call or text 988 in the US to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Text HOME to 741741 in the US for Crisis Text Line. Contact Samaritans in the UK at 116 123 or Lifeline Australia at 13 11 14. If you are outside these countries, tell me your location and I will help find local numbers. If possible, please reach out to someone you trust right now. This may be dark, but I chose not to end my life when I had the chance. There are more barriers now that my parents and doctors know about my suicidal thoughts, and I have a job that needs me. The guilt of doing it is stronger than when I first tried at 19. I am 32 now. I still wake up wishing I was dead most days. That has not changed since I was 9. If I had done it earlier, the few people affected would have had more time to get over it. Now I feel obligated to wait until my parents are gone. It feels awful to live only because I would feel guilty if I did not. I have nothing to look forward to, no interests to distract me, and only endless days of monotony. Story 69. I refused to have tea with my grandmother after bringing her oxygen tank. It was during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic, and she was already having difficulty breathing. She passed away a month later. Story 70. I doted on my wife, but I should have spent more time with my son. Story 71. I did not buy a ticket to fly to the one I loved most almost 40 years ago. Story 72. I hooked up with my best friend's boyfriend in high school. I still cannot explain why I did it, but I destroyed the most beautiful friendship I have ever had and clearly betrayed and hurt a truly wonderful person. Story 73. Early in life, I was a people pleaser and made decisions to please others rather than myself. Story 74. I had a woman I thought was a very good friend. We met online on a fan page and spoke daily for 3 years. We went on holiday together. She stayed a couple of nights before we left. The last time I saw my spending money of £3,000, it was on the sofa next to her. I trusted her completely. She knew I was a widow, had saved really hard, and was a full-time carer for my daughter. At the airport, after checking my luggage and my new handbag, there was no money. I assumed I had left it at home. During the holiday, my so-called friend became aggressive, and I did not understand why. When I arrived home to an empty apartment, I realized the money was missing and that she had stolen it. I had taken out my savings at the airport, savings I had been planning to use for a used car to help with my work as a carer. I deeply regret ever meeting that thief and was left devastated and broken. Story 75. I accidentally ran over a stranger. The mistake will haunt me for the rest of my life because I killed someone's child. I will never forget it, and I hope I will soon face the consequences. Being in jail does not count, right? Story 76. I am not telling off my former toxic manager who made my life a living hell. Fuck you, Lori. Story 77. I regret not spending more time with my grandma and not taking a video of her and me. Story 78. I overthought things and did not take a chance with a girl I had incredible chemistry with. Story 79. I did not approach that young woman in April 2014. I wonder if, had I done so, my life would have turned out the same. Story 80. I regret not spending more time with my mom when she was alive. I also regret marrying my husband. Story 81. I am not trying hard enough academically. If I had, I would be getting better scholarships. Story 82. He waited too long to try to mend a marriage that was already in its final stages and beyond saving. Story 83. I'll keep the details to a minimum. If I had allowed us to be robbed, my friend would still be alive and we would not have been shot. It's my fault he died. Story 84. I did not report my parents for child abuse, even though I could have escaped from them several times if I had trusted a social worker or a concerned teacher. Story 85. I did not stay in academia or in the arts. Dance was one of the few places I ever felt to be a refuge or a home. I did not remain in a small village in France where I lived for a time and knew, with every ounce of my being, that it was the place for me. It felt almost biological. I think of it every single day, especially since November 5th. Story 86. I told the love of my life to leave and did not try to stop her. I will never forgive myself for it. Story 87. I do not have the confidence to pursue a higher degree in college. Story 88. I wasted too much of my younger years worrying about relationships and love from men. I should have focused on sports at school, time with my family, or even a hobby. You have the rest of your life to find someone to love and build a life with. Your parents, friends, and childhood will not last forever. Cherish them. Story 89. I have a bright green marijuana leaf tattooed behind my ear that 17-year-old me did not put as much thought into as I would have liked because I was very stoned. Story 90. Not listening to my intuition, inner voice, friends, and family over the past few years would have saved me a great deal of heartache. Story 91. My dad asked me to watch a movie with him on a Friday night. We used to do it all the time. I was 13 and bratty. I chose to stay in my room instead. He died a few months later, and I am haunted by the look on his face when I said no to movie night. I'm sorry, Dad. I'd give anything to watch a movie with you now. Story 92. I had my daughter when I was very young and was not emotionally ready to be her mother. I was mean to her without realizing it, and it shows today. I do everything I can to make up for it, but I hate myself for not being a better mother when she was a little girl. Story 93. I have no ill will toward people who smoke marijuana, but I do not have a healthy relationship with it personally. Story 94. I drank to the point that I ended up with driving while intoxicated arrests, counseling, and institutionalization, and I continued to drink afterward. I wish I had stayed that quiet wallflower all those years ago and never touched a drop of alcohol. Instead, I felt I needed people to like me, so that meant going wild with partying and drug use. Story 95. Not finishing college and not being with the love of my life, who has passed away and can no longer be with me. Story 96. My ex-husband and I married quickly and young, and fundamental, irreconcilable differences became apparent within a year or two. I had just left an abusive relationship and did not know what it looked like to be cared for. I treated him very poorly before he ever had the chance to hurt me the way my ex had. He had faults and we were never going to work, but he was overall a good man who did not deserve my verbal abuse, blatant disrespect, or total disregard for his feelings. When we finally split up, I left in a cowardly way because I was not brave enough to face him, and for a long time I did not feel bad about it. I eventually came to my senses and apologized for many of the things I had put him through, but not enough. He passed away suddenly and at a young age, and I will always regret not owning up to more of my actions. Story 97. I did not finish college. I have a great career in the same field, but it still eats at me from time to time. College is less about learning information and more about learning to finish what you start. Story 98. I ruined every aspect of my life by drinking so much alcohol that I needed a liver transplant. I should have admitted I had a problem and sought help much sooner. Story 99. I regret not asking my grandparents more questions when I had the chance and the time I missed with my son when he was little. Sometimes I wanted time to myself when he was a toddler. Now he is 19, and all I want is to play with blocks with him on a Saturday morning. Story 100. I regret dating my ex. I wasted 4 years on him. It was a toxic relationship. He used to abuse me emotionally and physically. Story 101. I should have left my marriage when I found out he was still cheating and did not tell me he was molested as a child. It was a waste of 3 years. Story 102. Living an unhealthy lifestyle, including smoking and drinking, eventually damaged my body. You only have one life. Please take care of yourself. Story 103. Going into teaching destroyed all hope I had for the future. Story 104. I got into an argument with my boyfriend. In a rage, I ran out of the house barefoot and fell, which caused me to lose my baby at 14 weeks. I will never forgive myself for such a stupid decision. Even though I was young, I should have protected him better. Story 105. Growing up under neurotypical expectations was difficult. I was not diagnosed with autism until I was 19, and my childhood was marked by constant masking and loneliness. I wish I had received help earlier. Then I might have been able to enjoy more of my youth. Story 106. I wasted my teenage years by not learning important skills before entering my 20s. Story 107. I was not there to help my partner when he had a severe hypoglycemic episode while he was home alone. I do not know how I am ever supposed to forgive myself for failing him. Story 108. I think I will always regret not taking certain chances when I had the opportunity. I hesitated on something I really wanted to try because I was too scared of failing. Story 109. I did not listen to my mother the last time I saw her. She warned me about how cruel my grandmother was, but I did not believe her. That caused a major fight and we never spoke again. She died a few years ago, and the truth came out. My grandmother was responsible for much of what went wrong in my life. I wish I had listened to my mother that night more than 20 years ago, and I will always regret it. Story 110. After all these decades, too many to list. Story 111. The words I have said have hurt others. I have a terrible ability to identify breaks in someone's armor, which used to make arguing with me or trying to hurt me devastating for the other person. I used to eviscerate others before they could get to me again. Story 112. I participated in strange screaming and coughing contests as a teenager. I won in the short term, but it permanently damaged my voice. Story 113. I am not getting the education I need to do something I love. Story 114. When I was younger, I was very shy. I wish I had not been because it held me back and I did not get to do all the things I wanted to do as a teenager. Story 115. I became estranged from my son because of alcohol. I have not seen him in 15 years. I am 65 and sober, but I will never see him again. It hurts. Story 116. I am good at fixing other people's problems but take too long to fix my own. I might have made a great therapist or life coach, but I realized I do this because it is easier than facing my own issues, and I see greatness in others that I do not see in myself. Story 117. I regret the person who fathered my child. I would not want my child to be any different because she is amazing, so I cannot regret that too much. Story 118. I regret not asking for help sooner. I have spent far too long struggling on my own when there are people in my life who would drop everything to help me. Story 119. College. I would be so much further in life had I not wasted 5 years and gone into debt for a useless science, technology, engineering, and mathematics degree. Society does not care about clean air and water. What was I thinking? Story 120. Losing the one because I did not take care of my mental health. Story 121. I did not stay overnight with my mother the night my father passed away. Story 122. I gained and then lost weight, so now I have loose skin. Story 123. I regret not having more children. I wish I could go back in time and have at least 3 or 4 more. That would make my life complete. I absolutely adore children. Story 124. When I was 8, I took a detour with a friend. Every Wednesday my sister and I were supposed to take the bus to my grandparents' house. Teachers required a written note each time to let us go home. One time my great-grandpa said he would walk to the top of the hill and wait for us so we could walk back together. It was the only time that happened. We forgot our bus money, so we had to walk. A friend of mine was leaving then and invited us to go with her. Being 8 and 6, we did not think it could be a problem. Her house was close and we were not planning to be long, but it was in the opposite direction. While walking back from her house, my sister noticed she had lost her jacket. My friend went to look for it while we waited in front of the school, but she took a long time, so I told my sister to wait and I went to check. When we returned, the teacher who had let us go home found my sister, became very angry, and gave my sister her phone number for my mother to call about disciplinary action. She let us go home afterward. We had forgotten our great-grandpa waiting for us and had no phone to contact him. When we arrived, he was already home and worried that something had happened to us. I felt so guilty I cried myself to sleep for months. I am crying now remembering it. He began losing the ability to walk far soon after, so he never offered to wait for us again. He died 2 months ago, and I am pretty sure not going straight home that day will be my biggest regret until the day I die. I did not mean to make this so long, but here we are. Story 125. Getting divorced and remarrying is awful, especially the divorce part. Story 126. My parents came over unexpectedly to pick up their hoagies from a fundraiser. I was painting the kitchen and watching young children, so I was a little stressed. It was Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, and we had just put up the Christmas tree. I was short-tempered with my father, and I could tell he was hurt. He died 10 days later, on December 4th, 2017. Today is the 7-year anniversary. I hate my last interaction with him. It haunts me and will for the rest of my life. Story 127. I left my foster dog with the rescue, and they would not let me see him again instead of taking him and dealing with the consequences. Story 128. I began lying when I was young. Years later, I still lie to everyone. JIT gave me a personality crisis, so never lie too much. Story 129. I was so stressed that I ruined my health. I developed an ulcer and bad breath, and my life got worse. Do not stress. Let it go. Story 130. Not my biggest regret, but the one that irks me the most. Deleting my first DeviantArt account in my early 20s because I thought I had to keep my casual online life totally anonymous if I was ever to get a real job. I didn't lose any artwork. I still have all the original pictures. What I lost were the comments and conversations around that artwork. I didn't even take any screenshots before deleting it. So many amusing and sweet comments I wish I could revisit. It contained most of my college years. Most infuriatingly, there was a conversation I had with my sister in the comments of one picture where we realized we were messaging each other in real time from one room away. Me on the family computer and her on her laptop, and could see each other typing. It was a fun moment that is now gone. I thought a real job was more important than these memories. Now that attitudes toward online activity have changed, I realize I don't want or need a white-collar job anyway, and those priceless mementos are gone for nothing. It feels like I burned all my college photos out of fear that a potential employer might see a picture of me playing beer pong and judge me. Of course, you should use some caution with your online activity, but don't prioritize current social norms, which are likely to change, over memories you can never get back. Story 131. I was an edgy, spiteful little prick in secondary school. I hated school and took it out on the people around me like an idiot. It's a cliché, but I would give anything to go back and erase that part of my life, because it will keep me awake until I die. Story 132. I did not spend my $1,000 tax refund on Apple at $11. That was a $1.3 million mistake. Story 133. Not planning for your future and buying things you cannot afford. Story 134. I did not take a chance with girls I was attracted to or interested in. Not knowing was more painful than the answer. Story 135. I traded my 1984 Mazda RX-7 FB for what turned out to be a total piece of garbage, a 2002 Subaru WRX wagon, because I needed an all-season vehicle for Canada. Story 136. Not borrowing more money in 2020 when the rates were 2.5%. Story 137. My involvement with drugs has affected my growth to this day. I wish I had never become involved with drugs. Story 138. She made a move when the opportunity presented itself instead of thinking she was too good for me. Story 139. I didn't take the time to be cooler as a teenager. I was a boring asshole. Story 140. I was just letting things happen to me. I know better now, but oh my God, it sucked badly. I thought so little of myself for going through that. Laughing out loud. Story 141. Take the chance. You will fix it later. That does not apply to things that will ruin your life, but for 90% of the situations where you hesitate, just go for it. It is almost always fixable if it does not turn out as you want. If you do not go for it, you may think about it for a while or regret it in 5 years. Story 142. I bought the Blockbuster video dip and lost a lot in the market. Story 143. I regret not starting an instrument when I was a child. I play now at 20, but it is much easier to learn things when you are young. Story 144. I am not taking good enough care of my teeth. Fucking things are expensive. Story 145. Cheating cost me the most incredible woman of my life, and I will carry that regret until the end of time. It was not worth it. Story 146. I have exactly 2 regrets in life. That I didn't buy Bitcoin when it was offered to me for $13 a piece. That I didn't defecate on my ex when he begged me to. And I honestly don't know which haunts me more. Story 147. I will forever regret not asking out the girl I had a crush on when I was 18. We spent a lot of time together and she seemed interested, but I could not find the courage to ask her out. It does not matter whether the relationship would have lasted, but I feel I made a mistake by not asking. She eventually lost interest and moved on. I sometimes think about her and wonder if she is doing okay. Story 148. I was born with birth defects, which caused my parents to give up their goals to care for me. They have both passed away, and I still feel guilty about it. Story 149. I will be a better son to my father. I will never forgive myself. Story 150. I stumbled upon Bitcoin in 2010 and 2011 and did not think about it again until it blew up. Story 151. I moved to a different city because of a woman. Everything that has gone wrong since is traceable to that decision. Story 152. Leaving your spouse and children. Being caught for a capital crime. Tattoos and gender transition. Story 153. Nothing. Mulling over the past keeps you rooted there. Story 154. I did not take several trips when I was young. Travel was not part of my upbringing, so I did not do things like go to Scotland or Israel. I should have gone. Story 155. I always argued with my mom over the most irrelevant things. I wish I had shut up and listened to her, even if she was wrong sometimes. Story 156. I never made it to rescue swimmer school while I was in the United States Coast Guard. That was the main reason I joined. Oh well, life goes on. Story 157. I made bad decisions in my teens that led me to treat people close to me like dirt. They forgave me, but I can't help feeling awful. Every time I think about how horrible I was, I want to cry. Story 158. Not trying something out of fear leads to what ifs. Story 159. I spent my school years worrying about video games instead of participating in what school had to offer. I feel I was the last generation for whom it was not cool to play games, and that was a good thing because games made me a mental junkie who was completely removed from the world. When I discovered drugs, they became a less toxic habit, which is strange but true in my case. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.